Yo, welcome back to SeaBed. Last time we finished chapter 8. Narasaki left the hotel, got her haircut, stayed at a hotel, and then arrived at the sanatorium. Talked to Takako, and talked to Mayuko as well. And then that was it. And now we're at chapter 9. Okay, I am looking for answers right now. That's what I'm looking for. I'm ready. I'm prepped. I want some answers. Okay. I feel like they're coming. We'll see. Good morning, Sachi. I felt like I heard Tako's voice. I opened my eyes to see an elaborately designed ceiling. You're here? I sat up and fixed the shoulder strap of my nightgown. The sight of the Victorian sofa and the fancy chest of drawers with a plant on top had grown familiar to me before I knew it. So are we saying that you imagined the entire thing with taking the train, all the people in the train, getting their hair cut, talking to the lady that was cutting your hair, talking to the guy that made you the coffee. All of that just happened in your head? Really? I felt similar to how I did when I stayed at my grandparents' place for extended amounts of time. I pulled the feather-filled sheet close to myself and inhaled a deep breath. The scent made me think of home. You really are imaginative, like Narasaki said, I guess. Nanya left for her meeting right after breakfast. Oh right, her meeting. I myself returned to my room to get ready for hiking. Nanya had already prepared some sandwiches for me to eat on the road, so there was little else I had to do besides getting changed. My change of clothes were thermal underwear, a thicker jacket, a small bag, a hat, and a pair of hiking shoes. A pair of hiking shoes I stuffed at the bottom of my suitcase. I ended up picking them because they gave me a certain kind of look, but I wasn't entirely sure of their actual practicality. I went outside as soon as I finished my preparations. The sky was crystal clear, just like Nani predicted yesterday. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of trees flood my nostrils. This time I left the mansion through the front entrance. I pressed by the gates next to the parking lot and paused in front of the curving mountain road. To the left stretched a wide road that Nani drove down to the town. To the right the road narrowed, becoming too tight for cars to pass through. Nani told me to follow it if I wanted to go to the mountains. I took out the hiking map for beginners that was left in the lobby and continued towards the first of the marked destinations. I checked my watch to see if it was half past 11. The path for the hiking course was actually better paved than the road Nana used to drive me to the mansion. It was surprisingly flat too. I had to climb a few stairs here and there, but there were no steep slopes like I'd been expecting. The song of birds echoed across the area. Whenever their chirping became somewhat louder, I'd pause and look for them in the tree branches or among the rocks. Thus far, I discovered a Dorian red sword, a pale thrush, and a brown-eared bulbul. I'm not even going to say anything. You know what I'm going to say. All of them were in the bird encyclopedia Kozui found for me, which I had entirely memorized. This mountain seemed to have a surprising number of birds, just like Nana said. The scenery peeking through the thick woods was the same one I saw when Nana drove me up to the mansion. A range of mountains and the sea, clearly visible in the distance. Besides that, I only spotted a moss-covered old temple, a relatively high waterfall hidden by the surrounding trees, a shallow river running between the rocks, and a small, ancient-looking dam. I spent some time looking at each new things I discovered, and when I found none, I'd instead looked for birds. I reached my destination, the observation platform, by 12 o'clock. As I climbed up to it, the scenery of the southern sea extended before me in the distance. Sorry. The land here curved from the east and continued to the other end of the sea. The green lands and the azure sea seemed almost like they went on forever, all the way to the very edge of the world under the already boundless blue sky. I sat down on the bench I found on the platform, placing my bag by my feet. I had a quick sip from the water bottle I kept in the bag's side pocket, then took out my sandwiches and began munching away on them. There was not a soul around. It might have been too early for the New Year's season, or perhaps the place was always this deserted. I honestly couldn't tell, but the fact remained that the area was completely deserted. I turned around and looked at the way I came from, but saw no trace of anyone having ascended the path behind me. I listened to the chirping of birds as I ate. A bird landed on one of the tree branches above me. It was a species I already spotted before. It was fun to find birds hidden in the scenery. I couldn't recognize most of them, but whenever I found one I did, it made me happy. Bird watching might have been a much more fun hobby than I thought. I wondered if I could make out the birds better if I had one of those binoculars. And if I memorized the voice that described in the book, I could probably spot and recognize way more species than I did now. I went hiking today just because I figured it'd probably be a waste not to, but it ended up being much more fun than I expected. I had no companions to talk to, so I had no choice but to entertain myself solely by observing nature, looking for more animals or interesting trees. Taco would have probably spotted a lot more things than I did. I don't know, you're doing pretty well, but it only meant I had more things to look forward to in the future. I inhaled a breath and rose to my feet, my body feeling somewhat heavy. It was about time to start heading home. The map's recommended route was not the same road I used to come here. Instead, it led around the mountain, emerging near the back of the library. I could feel the cool breeze on my skin. I descended the gentle slope, fighting against gravity's attempts to hasten my step. I crossed the river, careful of the moss-covered, slippery-looking stones. After a few more minutes on the path, I emerged onto a wide road. I paused there for a moment. I took out a map from my bag to confirm the direction I should continue in. I spotted the girl walking towards me from one end of the road. Is it, Mia? It was Kozue. Oh, never mind. Hello. Hello. Are you going to the library? I asked. Kozue nodded and asked if I was planning to go somewhere. I answered that I was actually on my way back. She gave me an apprehensive look. As I was trying to understand what it meant, she passed by me. I put the map back in the bag and followed her. Do you know a lake that should be somewhere around here? It's that way. Kozue pointed at the woods. Looking in the direction she pointed in, I couldn't see anything other than the trees. There's a road further down, I'll show you. I followed the path that Kozue showed me. After only a few dozen meters, I could make out a body of water through the tree branches. We've seen this CG before, like this background before, but I don't remember where. The lake stretched much wider than I thought. Its surface tall as a mirror. I sat on a half-withered tree I found lying on the small sandy beach. It turned out to be sturdier than it looked. It didn't seem like I had to worry about it crashing down under my weight. I shifted my gaze back to the lake, observing the black, humus-covered slope come in contact with the water, as well as another fallen tree with its roots sticking out next to it. It didn't seem like the lake had received any artificial treatment. The area I had been sitting at was the closest I could get to the water without the risk of falling in. The water was so clear I could see the sand at the lake's bottom. At some areas, it seemed like the surrounding vegetation had also invaded the lake itself, covering parts of its bottom in green. Watching the lake reminded me of that one time Tako invited me to go fishing. We were still in middle school. Tako, me, and two of our good friends at the time left our houses on bicycles. Our destination was a lake that Tako's family used to visit by car all the time. She was the only one who knew the location. Tako said it only took 20 minutes by car, but being 2 mountains and 1 river away, the place wasn't exactly easy to reach for a bunch of children. In truth, Tako's 2 friends gave up after seeing the slope leading over the first mountain. I would have left myself, but I knew Tako would not give up and try to press on, with or without us. It would have been bad if she got lost, so I followed her while making sure to remember the way. Memorizing the unusual roofs of the houses around the mountains, I was thinking that I'd have Tako turn back around noon, even if by force. However, by noon, we had already reached the lake. Tako was overjoyed by having reached a place from her memories. That told me how little of the way she actually remembered. I looked at the lake currently in front of my eyes. The lake we found with Tako didn't have a wooden pier or a proper path leading to it. It was as wild as the forest around it. It also had a big tree leaning right over the water. Tako had a bright idea to do our fishing from atop that very tree. Meanwhile, I laid on a sheet on the sandy beach by the lake, just like this one, and ate jam sandwich while observing her. It was a pleasant, silent place. We spent about 2 hours at that lake. I read a book at Brat while Tako attempted to fish. Big fish would sometimes jump above the water, causing ripples to spread along the lake's surface. Though we didn't catch anything in the end, Tako was satisfied with the experience. I couldn't remember the way back all that well, but by the time we got back, it was already dark outside. Needless to say, my parents were furious. When we left the lake, Tako suggested we come back another day. I did give her a half-hearted reply of sorts, but I wasn't really planning on ever coming back. As such, that was the first and last time we went to that lake. I felt a bit sad, so I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. That was but another little episode from my past. The chilly air filled my lungs, soothing my aching heart. Now that I thought about it, that might have been the farthest trip I had ever taken on my bicycle. I had forgotten all about it until now. I tried to remember my childhood. Fishing, hot springs, amusement parks, zoos, aquariums. Tako forced me to accompany her to a whole variety of places. As I remembered the lake from my past, it felt like it began overlapping with the one I was staring at now. Before I knew it, I couldn't tell which detail was supposed to belong to which scenery. I quickly snapped out of that state, realizing I'd been breathing heavily. It probably would have been wise to stay away from those memories until I calmed down, but they started swirling around me like a ship that had lost its rudder. I soon gave up on resisting, and instead I decided to take an objective look at them. First, I asked myself whether this lake was part of the real world. All lakes look the same anyway, I answered myself. That was probably more or less true. When you start thinking about it too much, the resemblance becomes all the more striking. Our paths and memories were actually being overridden by the scenery. You've never been here before. In any case, this wasn't that lake, and I had no way of returning to the past. Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna fucking drown in the lake for a second, but I guess not. Oh, welcome back. I ran into Lily in the lobby. Hello. I hear you went out hiking. How far did you go? I followed the route on your map up to Sakuradai. Oh, Sakuradai. The scenery is quite striking there, especially during good weather. It was nice, wasn't it? I could see beyond the gulf from the observation platform. I had lunch there, then circled around the mountain to come back. I see. Nana has only just returned too. I think she's preparing dinner right now. I see. Oh, that's right. I brought Koza to the architectural office the other day. Everyone really liked her. At first, she was quiet as a mouse, but once she began talking about the mansion, she suddenly started asking more and more questions, until even the guys at the office started to run out of answers. In the end, they told us to come visit again anytime. I'm glad to hear that. Koza said she was worried about bothering everyone with her curiosity. I see. I'm the one who invited her, so there really was no need for her to worry. To think she's already considering these things at her age. My, what a nice girl. She might come off as a bit shy at first, but once you talk to her, you realize she can be surprisingly assertive, and she's cute as a button to boot. I wish Nana was more like her when she was a child. I imagine Nana was quite active in her younger years. Indeed she was. At Kozu's age, she was still running around the mountains looking for insects. Yes, she didn't seem like the kind of girl who'd be afraid of bugs. I imagine Nana chasing after insects and fishing in the mountains, which in turn made me remember Takako. Oh, will you look at the time, said Lily as she glanced at the clock. To tell the truth, I still haven't finished some of my duties. We can discuss Nana's childhood some other time. Okay. See you later then. See you. After that, I climbed the stairs and returned to my room. Yeah, you know what would really help right now? I think I need a scene of Sachiko shoveling snow outside for 20 minutes. I think that would help the pacing. I undressed, took a shower, and changed into something more comfortable. I glanced out the window while drying my hair at the dresser and saw the evening sun beginning to gradually shower the mountain range with its crimson rays. After lightly combing my hair, I descended to the lobby. The ground floor clock had just struck 5 o'clock. I considered going to the kitchen to look for Nana, but then realized I would probably be getting in the way of her cooking, so I changed my mind. I shifted my eyes to the corner of the lobby, remembering the reading her, and then I designed together. Aren't you leaving tomorrow? You said you were leaving in 2 days yesterday, so you're leaving tomorrow. Now that I looked at it, I got worried whether a chair would really fit there. Curious about the overall design of the room, I sat down on one of the stools by the wall and began to slowly scrutinize my surroundings. I don't know, that animation was funny to me. I could hear the ground floor clock creak with each new swing of its pendulum. That old thing must have been a pain to maintain. A jug with a forest plant in it rested on the counter. A black phone slumbered all alone and still in the corner. I felt like Nana had nothing to worry about concerning the lobby coming off as dull. By the time the orange rays of the sun penetrated the stained glass on the door, I started to regret not bringing a book with me. Being left with no other option, I spent some time observing the patches of sunlight as they slowly traveled from the center of the lobby to the camellia, then to the old register on the counter. I suddenly remembered how I met Nana in Rome. She said she was looking for new furniture. Even this room alone had an expensive-looking glass shelf on the other end of the counter, an old decorative typewriter, and some seemingly antique stools, not to mention all the other things I already mentioned. I wondered how much of those Nana collected by herself. At a closer look, I realized the items all seemed to date back to a wide variety of periods and came from all sorts of regions. However, they were not all a part of the world Nana created. Pick up the phone! A place filled with a soothing, nostalgic atmosphere that reminded me of the Western fairy tales I used to read as a child. Pick up the phone! I figured I should ask her about what her buying standards were. A continuous ringing sound shook me awake from my daydream. It appeared to be the phone. It continued to ring as I gazed at it. It didn't seem like Lily or anyone was coming back to pick it up. I think only you're hearing it. I stood up and walked in front of the phone. I picked up the receiver. Moshi Moshi? Hello? Hello? The voice on the other end of the line sounded kind of nostalgic. I instantly recognized it as Narasaki's. I'm sorry. I made you promise to call, but I ended up forgetting about it. Oh, don't worry about it. I wasn't sure if I'd have time to call anyway. Did you manage to get back alright? Yep, she said. One of her usual snorts followed. Suddenly, I heard the gong of the grandfather clock. Is something wrong? Narasaki added, as the sound startled me. No, the clock just surprised me, that's all. Hearing me say that, Narasaki let out another chuckle. The clock continued to gong. I felt like I could hear it from the other end of the line too. I mean, it would be ringing on Narasaki's end as well. Do you like flowers, Sachiko? Flowers? Yep, flowers. Well, I suppose I do. Not much more than the average person, though. In that case, maybe you should try growing a garden as a hobby. Why, that sounds pretty random coming from you. Taking care of a living thing does wonderful relaxation. I recommend keeping a pet, but you're allergic to fur, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. I just thought it'd fit you. Really? Well, I'll think about it. How's your schedule looking? When do you think I should drop by your clinic again? Narasaki didn't say anything, so I brought up the subject myself. However, she didn't answer right away, instead making a long pause. I don't think we'll be able to meet for a while. Why? I got a sudden new job. I'll have to travel a bit far for a while. What do you mean far? Where are you going? I'm going inside your mind palace. And what's going to happen to your clinic? The location isn't clear yet. As for the clinic, I'll be closing it. That's sudden. Sorry, but I'll be busy for a while, Narasaki said after I fell silent. She explained that we would not be meeting for a long while. I was even planning to buy her a present on my way back, but now I felt like a little dejected by the sudden turn of events. Hey, these things happen, you know, Narasaki added as I absentmindedly coiled the phone's cord around my finger. I started but gave up. It's going to be lonely without you, I said instead. You can always call Nane or Lily if you need company. I suppose so. Calling Nane from time to time did sound like a pretty good idea, but I also felt like Narasaki's departure would leave a gaping hole in my life. If you still feel lonely, just blame it on the season. It's all too easy to get caught up in a melancholy mood when it's cold and silent outside. Your apartment has a balcony, right? Try growing primroses. They're strikingly colorful things that actually bloom in winter. I'll give that a try if I feel like it. Good. Well then, I'll be hanging up. There's still something I need to take care of. I see. What's wrong? Is there still something you want to tell me? I was already prepared to hear her say goodbye, but she didn't end the conversation just yet. What makes you think that? I pulled my finger away from the cord, letting it stretch back to its normal length. Whenever you left your grandparents' house in the country, you'd always keep waving at them from the rear window of the car until they were completely out of sight. That's the kind of child you were. I'm not a child anymore. You really think so? Narasaki said. I'm hanging up. Okay. See you. See you. I pulled the receiver away from my ear and placed it on the phone. I heaved a deep breath as I let go of it and still glanced at the clock. Okay. As the man of the arrow was pointing at the number 2. That wasn't a very long conversation. The pieces of the stained glass on the door glowed in navy blue. As I considered going back to my room to wait for dinner, I suddenly felt kind of tired and didn't want to climb the staircase. I sat down on the same stool as before and waited for my sudden exhaustion to pass. I glanced at the phone, but remembering Narasaki's last words, quickly looked away. Resting my elbows on my knees, I rested my forehead on my palms. I closed my eyelids, listening to the pendulum swing back and forth. Oh, okay. Someone brought you to your room? I opened my eyes to the already familiar canopy above the bed. I promptly sat up and stood out from under the sheets as I always did. Then I got changed and headed off to have breakfast. Aren't you supposed to leave today? I guess you said you would leave at noon, right? As I reached the cafeteria, I found Nani with my breakfast at the usual table. I greeted her and we began eating together. The meal consisted of bread rolls, scrambled eggs, spaghetti, spinach salad, sausages, and a handful of cherry tomatoes. This looks even more extravagant than usual. It's your last breakfast here, so I felt like putting in a bit of extra effort. You can leave some if it's too much. A rolled bread had soft ham and crispy cheese inside. After finishing the bread, I scooped up a mouthful of spaghetti with my fork. This is pretty nostalgic. I remembered having something similar back in school that wasn't this good. I liked them so much I ended up looking up the recipe. Those noodles look kind of unusual. Do they even sell those in the supermarket? They're called soft noodles. You can get them directly from the manufacturer if you order a large amount. I see. Apparently, they're specially made for school lunches. They don't get as mushy as the normal ones and are supposedly better for digestion. Yeah, I remember how easily they tear just from a gentle touch of your chopsticks. Exactly, and then I nodded. Are you eating spaghetti with chopsticks? I realized this after looking at it up, but apparently Japanese school lunches after the war mostly used bread imported from America. The noodle industry eventually caught wind of it and decided to increase the variety of food available in schools. Developing these noodles as a result, they're especially rich in the B1 and B2 vitamins that children desperately needed back in those days. It all started in Tokyo before gradually spreading all across the country. Thank you, Wikipedia. I would never have guessed that these spaghetti had such a rich history. We spent the rest of our lunch discussing the kinds of food we used to eat at school. Apparently, Nana was a big fan of mackerel miso soup. When I mentioned I like to make sushi rolls, she taught me a few tricks to make the process easier and the result neater. I spent the afternoon in the mansion like I always did. Afternoon? I thought you were living at noon. After packing my bags, I made it down the lobby. Nana promised she'd meet me with her car, but I arrived a bit earlier than the agreed upon time. Oh? I placed my bags under the counter and lingered in the lobby for a while. I was thinking about sitting down on the stool when a black phone entered my vision. It didn't seem like it would be ringing again anytime soon. Is something wrong? Did my phone offend you in some way? Nana appeared in the doorway behind the counter. Checking the clock, I realized it was about time for my departure. No, it's nothing. I see. Well, let's go on our way, I guess. Right. How did you like it here? Nana asked as we rattled down the same road I ascended on my first day here. It was alright except for the time you assaulted me when you were drunk, but except for that it was pretty good. I had a great time. It's been so long since I felt so relaxed. I'm almost looking forward to going back to work the day after tomorrow. Glad to hear it. The car rattled as it passed over a big hole in the road, making Nana grow silent. I got a glimpse of the sea beyond the trees around us. Feel free to drop by for another visit if you're ever in the mood. Oh, definitely. Nana told me she still had some unfinished work to attend to as we parted ways at the station. After waiting a minute or so for me to go inside, she drove away. I found a small shop inside the station. I wonder what kind of shop this is. I briefly inspected its lineup. It had some stank, newspaper, and a souvenir corner. Key holders, wood carvings, and glass sculptures lined a long shelf. I found familiar writing utensils among the lineup, clips with cute bears on them. I felt like I had too few to put them to any real use, so I considered buying a bit more here. But as I wondered if it was really necessary, I grew worried about the time. I checked the clock inside the station and realized it was about time for my train. In the end, I bought 2 packs of clippings, thinking I might as well give the extra ones to my workmates as presents. Then I brought a few more things I thought they might like. I bought the ticket at the booth Natalie told me about, and as soon as I stepped onto the platform, the train arrived. Oh my god, we're finally out. Are we gonna have more office antics now? Just like in the prologue? That's nice lighting. The lighting on her face is nice. The train car rocked back and forth. I let out a sigh and inhaled a breath, realizing that the air here smelled a lot like the way it does back home in the countryside. A complex mix of steel, trees, the sea, old buildings, and incense. The scent waned with each station we passed. Instead, the towns began to grow bigger and bigger. After the next station, we emerged next to a highway along the sea. I watched the sun set along the sea, illuminating the train car in its orange glow. It sank deeper and deeper into the western horizon. I closed my eyes, turning my face to the center of the light. I imagined a world where the sun rose from the west. Taiko is sleeping now on the other side. The faint sunrays would soon fall on her closed eyelid, gently waking her. Are you saying that the sun... Oh my god. Are you saying that the reason that Takako would wake up with the sun on her face was because the sun was rising in the west? Does that even make sense? Was there a room in the east wing or the west wing? I mean, whether it's in the west wing or the east wing, it doesn't tell us anything, because it doesn't tell us whether the window is like facing west or facing north or facing south. It could be facing any of those. It could even be facing like the other like east-west direction if the building is U-shaped, which I think they said it was. So it doesn't tell us anything about like what side the window is facing, whether they're in the west wing or the east wing. She would then do her usual routine of radio exercises and head to work. That silly train of thought was enough to make me feel like I would be okay. Opening my eyes, I saw the entire train car painted in orange. It felt almost like I was in a pleasantly warm bath. I truly managed to put my vacation time to good use this time. The hallucinations and earring that had been plaguing me for quite a while seemed to have completely disappeared over the past few days. You know, I'm almost certain that in one of the Takako scenes in the sanatorium, I checked like how the sun was rising, and it seemed to be rising in the east. So, I don't know. I felt like I could return to work in top shape, but I also wasn't planning to take on as much as I used to near the end of the year. I shoved my right hand into the pocket of my jacket to confirm my ticket when my finger touched something cold and hard inside. I took it out and realized it was the penguin toy Kozue gave me as a present. It shone dully in the orange light, its silly face looking somewhat sad. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Wondering if a stray sunray reflected on some nearby surface that hurt my eye, I slightly rubbed it. When I did, another tear spilled forth from it. I paused for a moment, unable to understand what was causing this. No other tears followed, with the second one remaining moist on my cheek. The exact same scenery I had observed on my way here drifted along the other end of the window, but I felt like I myself was now somewhat different. Something didn't add up. It was like I left something behind that matching. I could recall someone telling me I had nothing to worry about anymore, but I couldn't remember who it was or when it happened, and I had a feeling I'd never be able to. I touched a trail left by the teardrop on my cheek, feeling the pain in my heart every time the train car swayed. It was like something important was being peeled away from it, little by little. However, I had no way of escaping the moving train. All I could do was sit here, waiting for it to reach its final destination. I felt like I heard a voice in the corner of my mind, but I couldn't make it out. A deep darkness enveloped everything. Okay, so is that you leaving Narasaki behind? Oh, okay, that was a very short chapter. Chapter 10. How many fucking chapters are there? Distant sound. I returned to the night duty room after my conversation with Narasaki. I picked up her teacups and pot from the table and carried them to the kitchen. Time to go shovel some snow! I spilled what little tea was left on the bottom of the pot into the sink, and realized I was out of boiled water to make more. I pulled the kettle off one of the shelves, filled it with water, and put it onto the stove. I mulled over my conversation with Narasaki while waiting for the water to boil. The conversation already took an hour, but I learned a lot. My head was still spinning, having received all this information about diaries and illnesses or whatnot. Now that I thought about it, I should have used that chance to ask Narasaki more questions. Yeah, you should have. For example, she said she had met me before in the past. I forgot to even ask when that happened. Besides, while Narasaki seemed amiable and answered more or less everything I asked, I felt there was still something off about how she phrased certain things. I wondered if she really didn't know Sachiko like she tried to imply. She didn't seem at all surprised or even curious when I told her Sachiko was the most important person in my life, almost as if she knew about her relationship. The hiss of the kettle brought me back to reality. I poured the boiling water into the pot filled with old tea leaves. I filled my teacup with the freshly made tea and took a sip, filling my head to clear up. I grabbed one of the monica that Narasaki brought to me and returned to the living room, sitting down on the cushion by the table. A bunch of keys Narasaki handed me lay in the middle of the table. They were all connected by a silver ring. Some of the keys had small green hexagonal key holders attached to them. Being all the same, they reminded me of the keys used in the hotels. They were different from the key holders Mariko used. I picked one key holder up to realize it was a bit heavier than I thought. It sparkled lightly, reflecting the light as I turned it in my palm. I suddenly spotted a number on it. Upon turning it a bit more in the light, I could make out a room number. I tried checking which room keys I had, and eventually found one at Kazue's old room. Okay. I placed the keys back on the table. Aren't you supposed to give these back to Mariko? I remember how I saw Sachiko in that room. I tried to get back to the room multiple times, but it was always locked. I didn't realize it until now, but the tea I drank seemed more bitter than usual. I now had the chance to check that room before returning the keys to Mariko. For some reason, I felt like it wasn't a complete coincidence that they ended up in my possession. I tried coming up with an explanation, but ultimately failed. I wondered whether I should go to that room right now, or instead tell Narasaki about what I'd experienced there. However, I couldn't figure out exactly what I was supposed to ask her. I was the only one who knew what happened there. Narasaki might have understood something I didn't, had I told her everything. On the other hand, she might have just deemed me crazy and locked me up or something. Besides, based on my previous conversation, it was already evident that she was trying to avoid discussing Sachiko with me. Yes, that was kind of the feeling, right? Like she was pretending that she didn't know who Sachiko was. There were no guarantees she'd tell anything, even if she knew. I gulped down the remainder of my drink and picked up the keys. I removed the one with Kazue's old room number on it, then shoved it into my pocket. It was entirely possible that nothing would happen, even if I went there. However, I couldn't help but feel like there was something important in that room. I made sure to slide a flashlight into my back pocket before leaving the night duty room. I ran into Sane near the spiral staircase in the lobby. "I was looking for you," said Sane as she approached me. She told me she was just on her way to the night duty room after finding my room empty. "What's up? I'm not working today." "You told me you wanted me to recommend you some books." I glanced at the cover of the book she was holding. It had an illustration depicting a sci-fi cityscape with a semi-futuristic look. "Is it SeaBed?" I remembered seeing Sane read that book before. "I saw you reading that. It's a mystery novel with lots of action elements." Lots of action elements? I don't know about that. Depends what you consider action. Maybe like snow shoveling action. Not much else. I think you'd enjoy it. The mystery itself is pretty good too, she added. "Is it? I guess we'll find out." "That sounds fun, but I'm a bit busy right now. I'll swing by your room to pick it up later, okay?" "Fine by me." Sunny nodded and returned to her room. I continued down the corridor in the opposite direction, slowing my steps so Sunny wouldn't see me stop in front of the locked room. I waited for her to turn a corner. I took a glance over my shoulder. Sunny was nowhere to be seen. I quickly surveyed the rest of my surroundings, making absolutely sure there wasn't anyone on the opposite end of the corridor either. I then took the key out of my pocket and stuck it into the lock. On second thought, I didn't necessarily have to hide this from Sanae. She wouldn't tell Mariko about it if I asked her to keep it a secret. Besides, all she would have likely done was warn me to be careful. I doubted she would have tried to stop me. Still, I didn't want to force her to lie for me, so perhaps this was for the best. I turned the key with a click and the lock opened. The handle no longer resisted me. I considered what I would do if I ended up being unable to return. I remember promising Mariko to tell her before going somewhere, but that was already after I had entered the room and closed the door behind me. There was nothing but a bed and an empty shelf in the room, just like the day I went to look for that thing Kozue lost. I assume it's the penguin, right? The place even felt kind of nostalgic. Now that I thought about it, I never even learned what I was looking for in here. The evening lights filtered in through the window, preventing the room from being as dark as last time. I wondered if I should have opened the window, but since I didn't come here to clean or do anything of the sort, I figured I'd leave it alone for now. I walked to the center of the room, then spun around. The place looked like a normal room. There were no caves or any other trippy imagery I witnessed last time. Because it was dark, you gotta close the lights. When I leaned against the shelf, my hand ended up covered in dust. I pulled my hand back, realizing I left a handprint. I considered sleeping on the bed, but that was probably a bad idea. After placing my hand back on the same spot, I closed my eyes. And with that, I remembered everything that happened here last time. A tiny sliver of light surrounded by a boundless darkness. When I moved closer to it, I saw Sachiko's back. She was sitting on the stone, facing away from me. When I tried speaking to her, she noticed my voice and slightly turned around, and that was where it ended. I replayed it in my mind countless times, so I was absolutely certain. When I opened my eyes, the room had been swallowed by darkness. Uh-oh. Surprised, I took a step back, hitting the shelf behind me with my buttocks. The flashlight I brought with me slid out of my pocket and fell to the ground. I instantly turned around to pick it up, but didn't see anything in the blinding dark. The sudden turn of events left me a little dizzy. Realizing I wouldn't be able to rely on my eyes anymore, I tried to ascertain my surroundings using my other senses. The scent and sounds I detected told me I was back in that place. I tried grasping around for the flashlight, but I had no idea where it fell anymore. I could no longer even find that shelf I hid earlier. In fact, I didn't even hear the sound of the flashlight hitting the floor. Perhaps I had left it on the other side. Surrounded by the hollow darkness, I let out a sigh. I swiftly calmed myself, focusing instead on what I was to do next. I came here to find Sachiko. I wanted to know what the present Sachiko, whom I still couldn't completely remember, was doing and where she was. I slowly took another look around. This definitely wasn't the best of the situations, but for some reason I didn't panic. Oddly enough, this darkness felt more nostalgic than intimidating. The last time I was here, I was too surprised to be able to think straight. But now, I felt like my head was working even better than usual. Perhaps the thought I might find Sachiko here made it that way. Whenever I was by her side, I'd feel neither fear nor anxiety. I heard a gust of wind blow past me. It reminded me of the sound of fast-moving subway trains. Additionally, the cool and musty smell reminded me of the floor of my old apartment. When I was little, I used to dig deep into the sandbox to find the driest and smoothest sand to use it as topping for my sand pancakes. Sand pancakes? A few times I managed to find a sand that had turned light green. I still had no idea what it was supposed to be. In any case, I stored my greenish pancakes in an empty water tank I found in the warehouse. I was always dry and cold inside, so it was perfect for storage. The few times I left my pancakes under the stairs of my apartment, I found them cracked, looking as though a cat or a dog had stepped on them. Those I stored in the tank, they probably survived until I moved. For some reason, I couldn't remember that clearly. I only remembered how I stored them in the tank. What the fuck is a sand pancake? What? I'm looking it up and it's not the same thing that she's talking about. Pancake made of sand. I can't find any information about this. Is she just like taking sand and putting it in the shape of a pancake? And like hardening it? Okay. I only remembered how I stored them in the tank. I checked to see if my limbs were still numb and decided to move forward. Much like last time, the ground at my feet had a hard, rocky texture to it. Careful not to trip, I slowly continued forward. The distorted echoes of my footsteps reverberated across the darkness. I continued walking for a while, but hit no walls or any other barriers. This was definitely not the inside of that room anymore. I was back. I blinked, but it didn't help with or without my eyes closed. Everything still remained the same. Perhaps this whole thing was just in my head, and my eyes had nothing to do with it. There was something off with my footsteps, so I paused for a bit. My left footstep reverberated across the area. Its sound grew gradually quieter until it eventually disappeared. With the sound of the next footstep, it reached me from behind. I turned around, but I still couldn't see anything. Nonetheless, I could hear rhythmic footsteps approaching me from that very direction. Oh, hello. I rubbed my eyes and felt like I spotted a white stain of sorts in the darkness. I focused my eyes on it and rubbed them again. The white stain began to grow bigger and bigger with each footsteps I heard. It was a white shadow. Stretching tall from the ground, it had the shape of a person. It was coming towards me. Oh. I stood in place for a few moments until the shadow came close enough for me to reach it. It stopped right in front of me. Yet, I still couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be. It had blurry contours and no colors. It only was just a white shadow. Sachiko's shadow. As it swayed from left to right, I could have sworn it was crying. Suddenly, it reached out and covered my eyes. Oh. Oh, okay. After blinking a few times, I looked around. I was back in the room. Before I knew it, I stood there in the middle, staring at the door. For a moment, I thought I was back, but this wasn't the same room I came from. I looked around while rubbing my arms. It was incredibly cold. I wore a coat over a long-sleeved shirt, a stretch of apparel that would keep me warm during winter. Yet the air in this room felt like it could penetrate right through its layers, chilling my skin. The room was about the same size as Kozue's, but the interior was different. The bed actually had a canopy with a curtain. The curtain was closed, making it impossible to see inside. I took a few steps to see if causing any sound would change anything. The dry sound of my footsteps reverberated across the room, but that was about it. I couldn't feel anyone's presence. It was still as death. Only a faint reddish light illuminated the interior. I stuck my hands in the gap between the curtains and slowly pulled them away. There was no one on the bed, much like I had expected. The curtains completely surrounded the entire bed, blocking view of its sides. I could barely make out the lamp on a silhouette of a clock on one side. I had to circle around the bed to check either of its sides. I inspected the room's interior one more time as I walked around. There was a Dracaena plant in the pot by the door. Not you too, Takako. An oil painting of some landscape hung on the wall to the right of it. Underneath it rested an antique-looking dresser. It was well organized and neatly maintained. Feeling like I'd seen some of these things before, I returned my gaze to the painting. It was either the scenery or the painting itself, but I could remember neither what it was of, nor the painter who could have painted the thing. I walked closer to have a better look, but that didn't help. Perhaps I never really knew this thing to begin with. As my hand touched the dresser, I instinctively pulled it back. Then I realized I had no reason to be afraid and leaned against the desk. It didn't have a single speck of dust on it. Whoever used it must have been a clean freak. The dresser had cute bent legs. Oh my god. I spotted an odd dent on one of them, with a bit of the wood chipped away. It was at around the height you'd stub your toe out. Just looking at it made my toe ache. Relaxed by such a silly thought, I turned around and stopped again. I wondered how I knew that the shape of the other side of the bed was a clock. Its silhouette was so blurred I couldn't have possibly figured out what it was based on just that. Yet I still knew it was a clock. It was a rectangle-shaped thing with a little roof on top. It had a brown clock board on top with the pendulum swinging underneath it. A little dwarf used to come out of it to play a melody whenever the clock struck the hour, but one of its springs had gone bad and now it no longer worked. I listened to the swinging pendulum while gazing at the vague contours of the clock. I followed it to the other side of the bed. The sound that I thought was just my imagination turned more and more real with each step. A side table stood by the bed. The clock I just described rested on it. Okay. I felt my head grow hot when I confirmed it really was the same thing. Oh. That hurt my eyes. It wasn't just a clock that I was familiar with. I knew that sided table, I knew that lamp, I knew that dresser, I knew that painting. This was the bedroom of the apartment I shared with Sachiko. It was as though the memories frozen in the back of my mind began to melt. The pendulum sound went through them like an ice pick. The curtains around the bed moved, a slight gap opening between them. White steam rose from it. As I looked at that, I realized that my fingertips had grown cold. The room's temperature had fallen so low that my breath was starting to turn white. I stuck my frozen hands in the gap between the curtains and slowly pulled them to myself. Someone was now in the previously empty bed. It lay on its sheets in a beautiful posture. It had the same face as me, but its skin was pale snow. Yeah, it's you when you're sick, right? Maybe you're already dead. I wonder what illness you got. Thinking? I felt like I heard someone's voice. The lifeless lips of the me lying on the bed remained closed. I strained my ears and indeed heard something again. It sounded akin to someone talking to themselves. The voice I heard in between the rhythmic sound of the pendulum was likely the same one I listened to the most during my life. Unsure of its source, I continued looking at myself on the bed for a while. That faint voice definitely originated in this room. I focused all my attention on it, careful not to disturb it with any stray thoughts, almost like an archaeologist digging out a brittle antique. And eventually, I started to make out the words of that familiar voice. My surroundings suddenly grew dark. It wasn't because someone turned off the lights. I simply closed my eyes without being consciously aware of it. I finally realized the voice was coming from inside my head. Okay, so the curtain is already up here. The night scenery was really beautiful, wasn't it? Which scenery? The one we saw at the Golden Gate. I mean, we ended up going there because you wanted to see the location of your favorite movie. We rented the car for 2 days and drove us to the opposite shore. Don't you remember? Okay, so that was... okay. I hear lots of suicides that happen on that bridge. What a nice thing to remember. I remember it, but I want to hear how you remember it. Okay. Sachiko began telling me about her trip. Which tourist spots we visited after landing at the airport. How we spent time at the hotel. Sachiko told me about everything, right down to the smallest detail. Listening to her speak, I started feeling like going on another trip together. I want to go there again. Where? Wherever. You can decide this time. Yeah, okay. I'll think about it. I felt the warmth of Sachiko's right hand in my left. Her slender fingers with her beautiful nails intertwined with mine. Have you decided yet? I asked. I'd like to go on a cruise. I want something where I wouldn't need to move a lot and could take my time reading books, she added. Well, I prefer something with a bit of physical exercise, personally. We can do that after you get better. Hey, I'm fine. I think I've been getting a lot better lately. Sachiko's features clouded over. You really think so? I'd better ask the doctor then. Sachiko pulled out a doll from the drawer and showed it to me. Oh my god. Yeah. Isn't this a CG from the beginning of the game? Obviously the doll wasn't there, but I think this is a CG we saw at the beginning, though. It wore a white lab coat. Sachiko raised one of the doll's hands and said, Hey there, it's been a while. I remember it now. We played with this back in kindergarten, right? You must have seen it at least 100 times in my room. I found it the other day when I was looking for a graduation album. That's so nostalgic. Tell me about it, the doll said, raising its hands. Hey, if you're a doctor, could you do a checkup on me? Let's see, the doll's little hands pressed against my forehead. Speaking of which, where did your stethoscope go? I lost it somewhere. Well, not like I can't determine your condition just by looking at you. That's quite a skill to have. You have a fever. Does your head hurt? Just a little. It seems you need more rest. You should sleep for tonight. Do you think you can manage that? I'm not feeling that bad. I can sleep just fine. I'll be here by your side, so relax and close your eyes. That's good to hear. I returned to the darkness as the voices and memories drew farther away. I kept my eyes closed, waiting for the next voice. I didn't hear anything for a while, but I couldn't force myself to move. It was entirely possible that the moment I opened my eyes, I would no longer be in that cold room. Remnants of Sachiko's presence still lingered about, along with something of tremendous importance. As such, I remained still in the darkness. After waiting for a while, I started feeling like I was already hearing it. I could hear it, but my brain refused to comprehend or even process it. I continued to wait. After some more time, I lost sense of how long I'd been doing this. I found myself assaulted by drowsiness, trying to interfere with my mission. When I pulled my consciousness away to escape it, I heard the voice again. Why not go to sleep already? I'll forget a lot of things if I fall asleep now. You'll forget a lot anyway. I felt Sachiko's hand on my cheek as I made a sulking face. I wonder what happens when people die. No idea, that's up to God, I suppose. I don't really believe in one, though. They already decided for me. Sachiko fell on thought. They say people remain in the hearts of their loved ones, and I agree. When I think about what you think, you appear inside my head. I'll keep thinking about you even when you're no more, you'll still be here inside me. Specifically inside of a sanatorium, where you have to fix lights every day. And shovel snow. What kind of place would that be? A great place. You live in a port town by a beautiful sea. It's quiet enough, the air tastes nice, and every season is perfect for reading. And I'm going to move there? Yes. There's only nice people living there, so I'll treat you well. Sounds like Wonderland. I suppose you could call it that. That sounds nice. Tell me more. I turned in the direction of Sachiko's voice and opened my eyes. However, her face was all blurry in the dim light and I couldn't make it out. Okay, I heard her voice. When I opened my eyes, I was in Kozue's room. I was standing in front of a bed without a canopy. Tears rolled down my cheeks. My last memory was that of regret. Sachiko was the one most in pain, yet I ended up relying on her again, and she took that heavy load on her shoulders for me with a gentle smile. Patches of orange sunlight illuminated my knees. The cold had abated as if it was never there to begin with. The pain and sickness I felt were completely gone too. I looked at my shadow on the bed and felt the sharp pain behind my eyes. That scene from earlier kept flashing into my mind. I had a recollection of the bed Sachiko and I lay on, and I'd already remembered the clock before even seeing it. That was without a shred of doubt our bedroom. We bought an apartment in the suburbs. It was about a 30-minute drive away from our office. Yep. That does track, I think. The memories of the days we spent together came flooding back into my mind like water crashing through a collapsing dam. I was way too much information for a mere dream. Besides, there was nothing ambiguous about those memories. I remember everything with perfect clarity. My heart was racing in my chest. I gave up on processing everything for now and took a deep breath. As I looked around the room, I remembered the sanatorium. My thoughts then moved to Mayako, Sanae, and Kozue, and finally to Narasaki. Sachiko mentioned that name in my returning memories. Narasaki knew Sachiko, and it was possible she was still here. And once I calmed down, I hurried out of the room. Okay, how are you going to explain this? I descended the spiral staircase in a hurry. As I emerged into the lobby, I nearly crashed into Narasaki, who was standing in front of the phone. Narasaki noticed me and turned around. Did you run into a polar bear upstairs or something? Her hand was resting on the phone's receiver. Have you finished your walk yet? I was about to leave. I want to ask you something about what we discussed earlier. Or can't you even spare a minute? Narasaki glanced at the stained glass on the door rather than the clock. I can stay while it's still bright outside. I'd rather not drive to the mountain road in the dark, you know. So what's bothering you? Sachiko. You implied you didn't know her, but you do, don't you? What makes you think that? Narasaki shrugged. I remembered. You're a doll! Narasaki's the name of the doll Sachiko used to play with. And you look a lot like it, too. And this same Narasaki sent Sachiko's diary to me. You cannot be unrelated, it wouldn't make sense. Narasaki slowly inhaled the breath and looked at the floor. I couldn't quite make out her face in the already dimly lit lobby. Her expression seemingly teetered between relief and exasperation. But I couldn't be sure. You are correct, I do know her. Why did you act like you didn't? I wanted you to remember it by yourself. You still could have said something. Narasaki shook her head. There would have been no point if you couldn't remember her yourself. If anything I said had caused you to remember something, it would have ended up distorted by my subjective point of view. Okay, sure. It wouldn't be your genuine memory, and these kinds of uncertain things are the first to be taken away by your illness. Your Sachiko and my Sachiko are different. In order to remember your own Sachiko, you have to recall your memories by yourself. Aren't you both just part of Sachiko's mind? That's why I avoided saying anything about her. All I could do was unobtrusively guide you towards the key to your memories. I understood what you were trying to say. Even back when I read the diary, there were times when I wasn't entirely sure if those were really my memories or just my imagination. And when I started thinking like that, I grew anxious and uncertain. Once you forget something for good, you cannot be sure about it anymore. Thanks to you, I remembered something very important. However, some of the stuff I remembered is pretty crazy, which is why I'm so stumped right now. Narasaki spoke up while I was trying to look for a better way to articulate my thoughts. What did you remember exactly? I'm dead! I'm pretty sure I now remember more or less everything about her life together. But those memories don't explain why I'm here. It's almost like I have two different selves, each with its own separate sets of memories. I feel like the time I spent living with Sachiko was akin to a dream that felt very real. Narasaki calmly listened to my rambling. Maybe you really don't know her. For all I know, she could just be a figment of my imagination. Finding it hard to believe? Narasaki asked. But if you remember that much, we can always talk about it later. Narasaki turned back towards the phone. She picked up the receiver and pushed a coin into the slot. Maybe she's still there, she said while turning the dial. I drew close to the phone. Narasaki held up the receiver in front of me. When I took it and pressed it against my ear, I could hear a long beep. Moshi Moshi? Hey, Sachiko, it's me! Your dead girlfriend. What's up? Guys, I have a sneaking suspicion that the milk under the baseball field isn't going to be explained. Oh, last chapter. 4-leaf clover. Okay, I guess we're at the end. Should I stop here? I mean, I guess. I guess I'll stop here and I'll just, like, finish the game next time. Depends how long the final chapter is, though. It's hard to tell. So... I mean, I get what it's doing. Like, I think I understand what they're saying, but my problem is that it doesn't answer most of my questions, I think. Like, I mean, I've been saying this for many episodes now, but it's just the sanatorium is part of Sachiko's mind, and Takuko is also part of Sachiko's mind, and Narasaki, so is Narasaki, and that's it? Is that it? Is there something else I'm missing? I have a lot of things to say, but I think I'll save some of these until I'm done with the game, because it's probably going to be next episode anyway, and I don't want to like separate all my thoughts in the game. I want to like have all of them be in one place. So I'm gonna hold off on some of my thoughts right now. I'm gonna say everything I think about this game next time when I finish. I guess I'll commit to finishing this game in the next episode. But I definitely do have some thoughts. But regardless, okay, I guess next time we're finishing the game. Unless it takes like fucking 3 hours, then I'm gonna I'm gonna split it in 2 or something. But yeah. Alright, see you next time.